You get an invite, you get an invite, and you get an invite as well. All these dating shows, get out the window, get in the bin. And they were spilling the beans on a plot to kill the king. The king. The one who is ruler over their heads. Yep. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel, and also welcome if you are new. I'm so grateful to have you all here. So my name is AkuaB, and here on this channel I cover all things faith, culture and encouragement, and in today's video I'm going to be doing something slightly different and I'm so excited to share it with you guys. But before we get into that, I've been gone for a hot minute, so I'm really sorry about that. I've not been here on this channel and a lot has happened in this strange and wonderful life. And despite the difficult challenges that I've had to navigate through, there's also been some amazing things that I've been able to go alongside and also to be a big part of. So I'm really excited to be sharing that with you guys. And I think potentially there's space for a life update or some kind of sharing with you guys a part of that. I think maybe something on The Chosen. I know a lot of people are on my channel or stick around because of that, and I think I need to touch on that at some point. Whether I'm ready just yet, whew, I don't know, but I'm really excited about what I'm going to get into today. So without further ado, let's get into it. So before I get into today's video and that juicy content that you're all waiting for and you've waited so long for, I just want to give a quick shout out to Tawana Thornton, a silver tiered Bible buddy. Thank you so much to all my Bible buddies who are supporting this channel. It is so amazing to be able to see people who want to take that extra step to support me in this way. So thank you so much. If you would like to become a Bible buddy today and have access to exclusive content and different perks, then please make sure to click the join now button down below or click the link in the description that will be listed down there. And without further ado now, let's get into it. Okay, so this content is a slightly different pace from what you're used to seeing on my channel. This new type of content is going to revolve around story times. And I've always had a curiosity and a love for story times on YouTube. I think a lot of the people that I follow in some capacity have done or started with story times, and I just find them so engaging and just immersive. I can watch them when I'm cooking, I can watch them whilst I'm cleaning, I can just chill and sit down with a cup of tea and just watch a story time and feel like I'm part of someone's life for like 30 minutes as they tell me one of their stories from high school or something like that. And I've always thought of a way, I've always wanted to have a way to incorporate my faith and story times together, and I think I found a way that I'd love to explore. And I've had this idea for about just under 2 years now, since 2021 and beyond that as well, and I've seen so many other YouTubers in the Christian sphere of things start to do these videos, and I'm like, oh, you know what, I really should have just started with that. But I think the prayer and the waiting and the patience will pay off in my delivery. So I really hope that you guys enjoy these kind of videos just as much as I've enjoyed researching and also producing them as well. So today, as my namesake, we're going to get into the book of Esther. And it is my namesake because my first name is not Akua. Akua is one of my middle names. So I am Ghanaian, if you didn't know that already from the name. So my first name is Esther, and then my middle name, one of my middle names, is Akua. So I'm really excited to get into this book. I thought, which book to start with, because there are 66 books in the Bible, and I was thinking, like, which one should I start with? I've kind of had a taste with that, with going a bit through Daniel earlier on in my channel, but I think this story is a juicy one to start with. So let's get into the book of Esther. So our story begins in the land of Persia. But not modern day Persia. We're gonna reel it back all the way to the 400 BCs, all the way before Jesus Christ. So in this land of Persia, there was a ruler called King Ahasuerus, also known as King Xerxes in the Greek. So this king was mighty. He had so much rule. I think back then it was just crazy how people had so much power over just massive spaces. So this guy was ruler over 127 provinces, and that was spanning all the way from India all the way to Ethiopia. So this king, he has all of this power, all of this rule. He looks around and he says, let me enjoy, let me have a little bit of a celebration of this stuff. So he turns around in his third year of his reign and he's like, guys, I'm putting up a banquet. Who wants to join me? Literally everyone. People who are my advisors, people who are beneath me. I want everybody there. So he's inviting everyone to this banquet. You get an invite, you get an invite, and you get an invite as well. So everybody is invited to this banquet in Shushan, the palace in Persia. So this is where our story begins. So everyone is having a great time. In the 7th day of the feast, everyone is chilling on these silver and gold beds, the things that people relax on, recline on, chill whilst they're having a banquet. The food is immaculate. The meats are the king's meats, the king's wine. Everything is going down swimmingly. Everyone's vibing, chilling. Some are getting a bit too drunk over there. That guy, he needs to be removed. But there's purple tapestries hung up on the marble pillars. The floors are made of different colors of marble. Everybody's chilling, it's warm, it's merry. And the king, out of this luxury, he looks around, he says, something's missing. Something's missing. Something's missing. And he says, you know what, this is all well and good and stuff, but this is child's play. I'm used to this stuff. I'm used to this luxury. My wife, she will be brought here. She'll be brought here for our entertainment because she is a beauty. Why not invite her to the party as well so you can feast your eyes on her? Don't just stop at the meats, don't just stop at the wine. Bring my wife as well and she will be feasted upon in her appearance. So enter Queen Vashti. King say, what? I'm not going anywhere. No, I'm having my feast right here. No, we're not going. I've seen how his friends are. I know how he is. I'm not going there, especially to this audience. Nuh-uh, I'm staying here. Thank you. Queen Vashti said no. Queen Vashti said, I'm not going there. She said, you're gonna have fun without me. And it's interesting, actually, the reaction of Queen Vashti. I might have to do a little side segment on her. Her story is so interesting in the role of the bigger scheme of the book of Esther. Very, very interesting, and a lot of people parallel Esther and Vashti together. So anyway, Vashti has said no. Vashti is the queen, yes, but the king is above the queen. When the king says jump, the queen says how high. And Vashti did not even budge. She did not budge. She was having her own feast with the ladies of the court, the ladies of the palace in Shushan. She was not worried. She was not stressed. She said, nah, I'm not going. I'm not going there. So she said no. The person who went to fetch her comes back. King, your queen, she said she's not coming. She's not coming. She's not coming to this party right here. At this time, when all the dancers have been brought out, the wine is flowing, people are most likely drunk, the queen is not coming into the king's party, indirectly becoming the party pooper. And now the king is riled up. And immediately, without a second thought, his counselors, the king's counselors, they immediately say, you know what? Yeah, she needs to be replaced. Yeah, that one, not a good egg. She's a bad egg. Replace her right this second. We need a new queen. King, we need a new queen. Let us set an example here. So this is what happens. The counselors have set this into motion and the king's ear, it's being tickled. He's listening to their plans, he's liking the sound of it, he's liking the idea that any woman that challenges her husband, she should be gotten rid of, and he's advised to send out a decree to all the nations that he's ruler over in every language, just to make the message clear that the man should be ruler over his own house. So after that party came to an abrupt end, we have a new quest. We have a new mission. We need to find a new queen for Persia. So the king is on the hunt. All these dating shows, get out the window, get in the bin, because King Ahasuerus is on the hunt throughout all of his 127 provinces to be able to look for his new queen, to be better than the last Queen Vashti. Now enter Esther. So enter Esther, or otherwise known as Hadassah, which is the Persian version of her name. She is one of our new characters arriving fresh onto the scene, along with her cousin Mordecai, who's actually been raising her and looking after her, taking her in as his own because her parents had passed away. So she was an orphaned child and he has been raising her and taking care of her up till this present day in the story time. So enter Esther and Mordecai. So I don't know about you guys, but as a girl reading reading the book of Esther in the Bible, I was just so enamored with this whole scene in the book. It just painted such an amazing picture. If you wanted one of those cliche moments of a makeover, one of those makeover montages like Princess Diaries or something like that, this is the scene. There was a 12-month period that the eligible women, the eligible virgins of Persia would have to go through to be able to be presented before the king finally, to see if he would accept her or not as his new queen. So Esther went through this process as she was chosen as one of the eligible women to be able to go forward into the king's presence. So before she ever met him, before she set one toe into his kingdom, into his palace, into his atmosphere of space, she had to go through a 12-month rigorous process of cleansing and bathing and shaving and all of these different things to be presented before the king. So at the end of this process, Esther is finally presented before the king. And guess what? He loves her. She is the most favourite out of all of the women, and she gained his favour. So she ends up becoming Queen of Persia alongside our king. He finally has a queen to take that space. And this didn't just happen overnight. Actually, there was a few years that went into his selection process. So it wasn't just an overnight thing of Esther going from orphan to being Queen of Persia. It was actually quite a few years in the making. So she has waited, she has bided her time in this whole process, and the king finally spotted her and she became queen. So after Esther becomes queen, she is now alongside the king, getting to know him, living life with him, getting to grips with the whole kingdom, with the palace in Shushan, and little spanner in the works. Esther is Jewish, and she decided to conceal her identity from the king throughout this selection process, through this whole grooming process, and finally being presented before the king, because she was instructed to by her cousin Mordecai, the one who raised her. So after this has all happened, Esther is chilling with the king. She's all Gucci, she's looked after now, she's great, off Mordecai's hands. He's just chilling, working in the palace now. And as he's going about his daily duties one day, he passes by the gate of the palace, and he happens to hear Bigthan and Teresh, two eunuchs from the kingdom, having a little chat. They're having a little gossip, and he just decides to, you know, incline an ear just to see what they're talking about as he walks past, and he stumbles upon some juicy information. They did not see him. They were too immersed in their gossip to hear him coming or to see him pass, and they were spilling the beans on a plot to kill the king. The king. The one who is ruler over their heads. Yep. So these eunuchs, they don't have any other mission other than to really serve in the kingdom. They're people who are castrated. They don't have private parts, so they have been removed for their service. So that is what these eunuchs are doing. So Mordecai decides, you know what, I'm gonna let the king know, but I'm not gonna go directly to the king. I'm going to go to Esther first and let her tell him. So Mordecai confides in Esther about this plot to kill the king, and she goes over to the king and lets him know and speaks on behalf of Mordecai, letting him know about the plan against his life. I'm gonna need Mordecai to get some kind of reward, because he's basically just saved the king's life. And rewarded he was. Kind of. He was written about in the Book of Chronicles before the king, and also the two guys, the two eunuchs that were actually plotting against the king's life, they were both hanged on a tree pretty swiftly. So that is what happened to them. So that brings us to another character who is fresh on the scene. His name is Haman. So this character arrives on the scene, and no lie, I'm just gonna be straight up. I do not like this guy straight away. I just don't like him. So this guy called Haman, he is promoted, he's well respected, he walks around the kingdom and people bow, he walks around the kingdom and people are just paying him respects and regards, and no one can touch him. He's untouchable. Apart from Mordecai. Mordecai will not bow before Haman. And this riles him up. You know, it riles up that ego in Haman. He is not having it. He's really upset about this, that one guy out of the whole kingdom will not bow to him. He's so angry. So he goes before the king, and he knows a little thing about Mordecai, that he is actually Jewish. So he goes before the king and he says, yeah, I'm gonna need you to make a decree that you can't revoke. You're gonna need to write that for me. Yeah, just basically getting rid of all the Jews. And once that is done, that's gonna get rid of Mordecai for me, as well as everybody else who doesn't obey my laws, because they seem to think that their God's law is above the law of this land. So yeah, getting rid of them, that would be a win-win, right? So the king agrees and actually writes this decree, and this day of annihilation of the Jews is basically set for the 13th day of the 12th month. So obviously Mordecai is going to learn about this decree, and he is just overwhelmed with grief about this decree. So he ends up putting sackcloth on himself, and it's basically a way of mourning. It's a way of showing grief and just the emotions that you're feeling about the situation. So nobody doing this practice is allowed inside the gates of the palace. So he removes himself to the gate outside of the palace, and he is in this way for a while. Obviously Esther is going to find out about this as well. He's the guy that raised her. People are going to recognize him, to see him passing by at the gate, and they're going to come in and tell Esther. So Esther finds out about Mordecai being at the gate and the way that he is mourning and grieving over something, and it's passed on to her about the decree. So Mordecai found out about the decree, and now Esther has found out about the decree. So Mordecai starts petitioning with Esther, and he's like, you're the one with the links to the king, and the king is the one that moves the pieces around the chessboard. You're gonna need to, you know, bend his ear and like do something, like please step in and save your people. So Esther is like, what do I do? I'm now in this situation where I have the influence potentially to tell the king, to get him to put an end to this decree, to stop him getting rid of all of my people, because I am one of these people. She has a heart for them because she is a Jew as well. So she obviously wants to stop this happening, but there's a little caveat in there because the king has actually not requested her presence in 30 days. That's like a month. That's a month's time. He's not requested her presence, and in those times you could not enter into the king's presence without being requested. So even as the queen, she was withheld from coming to visit her husband without being called upon. So she's in this predicament. She is like, oh, I don't know what to do. I really want to help. I just don't know if I should risk my head and like go before him and break all of these traditions. But in the end, she's like, you know what? Someone's got to do it. I'm the person that's closest to the king and has the most influence over him in this way. Let me try. So after being persuaded by Mordecai to not think about herself, but think about her people, and think about the greater plan, then she's like, right, let's do this. But before I do that, she instructs Mordecai and her people as the Jews to be fasting without food or water for 3 days, day and night. So Esther is visiting the king. Whew. We've been waiting for this. We've been waiting for this. Esther is approaching the king without his permission. She's literally risking her whole life, her existence. Never mind her people. She is now on the front line for her people in this second. She is risking everything. The only hope that she has is if the king holds out his scepter to be able to invite her in, showing her that he will not kill her simply for approaching him without his request. The king hands out his scepter, showing that he will not kill Esther. Whew, we've avoided it. We're not gonna die. Hallelujah, we can praise about this. So Esther approaches the king with her request, and she says, darling, my husband, will you come to a banquet with me? Will you come to a feast? And she also invites Haman. How clever. She's like, you know what? Keep your friends close, but keep your enemies closer. So she invites over Haman to this feast as well. So this feast takes place. And at this feast, the king is like, get to the point. Like, why are we here? Haman's also looking around like, yeah, why are we here? This is great and all, like, I am like amazing and just like the person that the king loves, and he showered me with everything. I'm even invited to the queen's banquets with only the king as the other guest. So he's just chilling. He's like, yeah, what next? Like, what is this? And the queen's like, you're invited to another banquet, if I may. if you would like to join me for another feast, I would love to have one with you the following day. So the following day comes, and at this banquet, the focus turns to Haman because, you know, that ego, it's just not resting. He has no rest. So Esther doesn't petition that day for anything to do with her people, but Haman is like, you know what? That Mordecai, as he's swilling his wine, that Mordecai, he's getting on my nerves. After talking to my wife, Zeresh, I've just come to the conclusion that he needs to be killed as well. Yeah, he just needs to be gotten rid of. Yeah, I think the best way to do that would be maybe like hang him or something like that. So he asks the king to get rid of Mordecai in this way and have some gallows built. And obviously the king loves him, so why not? One night, it's not the rain keeping King Ahasuerus up, it's not some lightning, it's not the thunder, it's his own thoughts. He's restless, he can't get to sleep, he can't get some quality shut-eye. So he requests for the Chronicles to be read to him. And in this fateful reading of the Chronicles, and we all know what's in there, Mordecai's section where he saved the king's life comes up. So in the king's thoughts, as he's trying to get to sleep, he remembers this and he's like, oh, you know what? He did kind of save my life, you know, that one time from those two eunuchs plotting against my life. Wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him. So let's have a parade in his honour. And I'll have my right-hand man Haman leading the way. So he does that for him. He puts this parade on, Mordecai is exalted in this parade, and Haman is appointed to lead it. And we all know Haman's ideas about Mordecai. He hates this. This is literally his perception of hell. His ego, again, it's rattled. He is not having peace and rest. He's looking at Mordecai now like, King, this is for me. Did you switch up the names? Like, you know, what's happened there? And his wife Zeresh, she's like, careful about that Mordecai. Careful about that Mordecai. They're both side-eyeing Mordecai. They're like, careful about him. Don't know what's going to happen with him, so keep an eye on that one. So as Haman is feeling all depressed about this stuff with Mordecai, he remembers, wait, I have another banquet to go to with the queen and the king. Let me go over there and stop stressing myself out and letting my wife stress me out as well. Let me go there to that banquet where I'm seen, where I'm appreciated, where I'm the best. So he goes off to the queen's banquet. So just as Haman thinks that his blood pressure can just decrease by a few points, Esther decides to let slip the biggest secret so far in this story. I am a Jew, and you have made a decree that will eventually eradicate all of my people from your land. Might want to leave. Might want to leave. After hearing this, the king, for once, has made some sense. He's so angry and he goes out into the palace garden in the midst of Haman and the queen still in the palace. He goes out into the palace garden to just vent, to just let out his frustrations. And in that time, Haman starts begging. We see Haman begging for his life to the queen. He's begging for his very existence now. He's no longer prideful in this moment. He's no longer thinking, you know, everyone bow to me, everybody just, you know, greet me with such splendor and authority, I will be praised. He's thinking, when is my next meal? When is my next meal? So very rightly, he gets up, he starts pleading with her, but he unfortunately, he trips up. He trips up his foot. His foot decides to catch, and the king returns from the gardens at that very time. And he ends up on Esther's lap. He stumbles onto her couch. This makes the king think that he is trying to assault his queen. And immediately it is ordered that Haman is actually hung on the same gallows that were meant for Mordecai. So as we come to the conclusion of this story, let's get back into Esther. So Esther is just reeling. Her people have been persecuted, they've been sold, and now they've been brought into this land, into the land of Persia through the Babylonian capturing, and she's become queen somehow. She's hidden her identity, and now the sheets, they've just come crashing down. She has revealed her identity. The person who was after her life and the life of her people has been executed, but it cannot stop there. The good has not ended yet, because the decree to kill all of the Jews, to kill all of the people, is still in place. A decree that is made by the king cannot be revoked so easily. So now Esther starts working with Mordecai to be able to reverse this with the king. So they ask him if he can put a counter decree in place so that the Jews can actually go after everyone that sought to kill them, that sought to take their lives on this appointed time, on the 13th day of the 12th month. So on this day that the Jews were scheduled for this annihilation, they're actually going to flip it around on those that wanted to get them. And a lot of the Jews, they just started celebrating, started rejoicing when they heard this news of this counter decree. And a lot of people actually became Jews in this time period because they were afraid of the Jews. As the aftermath of Haman's passing as well, Mordecai is now exalted to Haman's position. Haman has obviously been removed and Mordecai is exalted. He now has Haman's status and his land. Esther has his land now. So everything of Haman's has been redistributed. He has nothing of it. When I tell you that nothing on this earth is to be stored up, store up your riches in heaven, because you will not take any of it here with you. So on this day that is appointed for the Jews to be eradicated, they reverse it around and they end up killing around 75,000 people, 75,000 enemies. All of those people, they didn't have to. The decree wasn't that they needed to be killed. It just says, yes, let's get rid of them. So 75,000 people were killed this day. And as Mordecai is a very prominent citizen now and Esther is still in rule, she has not been deposed like her predecessor Vashti because of this series of events. At Esther's request, also the sons of Haman, he had 10 sons. Imagine the lineage that would have come from that. All of his sons are executed, and to celebrate this period of the Jews overcoming their enemies, they start a season called Purim, and it's a celebration in which they rejoice overcoming their enemies. And it's actually crazy. Pur actually means lots, and it's basically the way that so lots is like the kind of lottery. It's not just it's not the amount lots, it's like lots as in a lottery, like different tokens and things that you would choose to gamble or just basically randomly choose something. And that is what Haman did to choose the date for the massacre of the Jews. So they called it Purim as a way to commemorate the title, the way that it was established, the day of executing the Jews. So they, to kind of put a spin on it, they called it Purim to commemorate that title. Okay, so to conclude our story, things basically end like that. They end with Esther and Mordecai being strong, being in positions of power. Mordecai is a great and mighty citizen in the kingdom under King Ahasuerus. Esther is still queen and she is not deposed like her predecessor Vashti. And the king, he's been king from the start, but we have mixed opinions on that. So yeah, that is the story of the book of Esther. I really hope that you guys enjoyed it because I loved filming it. It was actually so fun, and I can't wait to bring to you more story times like this. Let me know what you guys think, and yeah, I'm just gonna have a little section of notes now, just some thoughts that I have from this story, and then I'll conclude today's video. Okay, so I thought I'd go through this chapter by chapter and just have some little notes here and there before I finish up today's video. So in this first chapter, we see that Ahasuerus is calling out his queen Vashti. So he's having this banquet of excellence, he's having this time of enjoyment and really just indulging in all of his riches and his power. So Queen Vashti, it is rumoured that she actually was struck with something like leprosy, which is why she didn't come out at the king's request. But obviously these are just stories, we don't know the hard truth of it, it's basically just known that she refused to come out at the king's command. And it's actually interesting that she didn't come out. Again, like I said, I'd probably want to do like a deeper dive of Vashti. I find this segment of scripture really interesting, because when I first read it as a new believer, I was like, oh, but in this environment, would you want to come out as a, you know, as a woman in this midst, in front of all of these men? They're drunken, they've been drinking for like days, they've been enjoying themselves, and it's like the peak of the party, it's like the last day, everybody's drunk, everybody's merry, all of these guys are probably very handsy, and I watched a video on Vashti, and it was saying that at this time of the evening, at this time of celebration, there would have been people who were less moral that would have come out in their eyes back in the day. There would have been like dancers, that people that danced for celebrations and events and things, so dancers would have been brought out, women in less clothing, etc. So these kinds of women were brought out. So at this time it was not fitting, especially befitting for a queen, to come and enter into this environment now at this time. So if anything, it would have been disrespectful for her to be in this environment. So that is what I found interesting from chapter 1. It's definitely a thing of just chop and change. Like, the queen says no, so we get rid of the queen. It's not even a discussion at that point. It's just like, yeah, she's not fitting the role, so let's just get rid. In chapter 2, we see that he's looking for a new queen, and it's taken him some time. Like I said in the story time, it took him a few years. When you look at this, the timeline between him leaving Vashti and also getting married to Esther and her assuming the position as queen, it is a little bit of a gap there. So it's interesting as well that Esther decides to conceal her Jewish identity, and obviously for good reason. Again, there was that kind of divide, and there always kind of has been, between the people surrounding Jews and then the Jews themselves. The people in this scenario, there's been a lot of selling and moving and all of this kind of things. They were taken into captivity by the Babylonians, so there was just that whole thing. There's just a lot of drama with the Jewish people at this time. So she's been instructed by her guardian Mordecai to just not reveal that. He's just like, don't even say that, just save yourself the drama, don't reveal that to the king, he likes you, that's enough, just get married, that's it. In chapter 3, we're introduced to Haman. Haman is just that villain. Like, there is no really redeeming qualities about him. He's made known from the start as this kind of arch villain. He's known from the start. We obviously know that Esther is Jewish from the start, but we also know that Haman is just power hungry. He's so power hungry, and he's driven by ego and pride, and he's really just set up as this arch nemesis against our protagonist being Esther. And I think also Vashti is kind of set at that tone as well within the context of this book. And he's obviously wanting to get rid of the Jews, and this is all instigated because of his pride. He sees that Mordecai will not bow to him, he will not submit to him in the way that his other people will. And because he is different from him, because Mordecai is a Jew and he will not submit to him, he will not submit to anyone apart from God, his God, he is taking that as a personal offence, and therefore wants to further his hate and further the impact of his pride on the kingdom by removing a whole people in the Jews. And then we see in the rest of the story, we see how it's kind of a chop and change. I was watching the Bible Project on the book of Esther, and how it's kind of a reflection. When it gets to this stage, it's kind of a mirroring of events that happen. So all of the things from this point that Haman starts to set up, like the gallows for Mordecai and the decree for the Jews, all of these different things, they kind of get reversed back onto him or his people. So Haman ends up getting hung on the gallows, and then Haman's sons end up getting killed in part of the massacre of the Jews against their enemies. And throughout these banquets as well, it's just interesting how innovative Esther was. She had such patience, and she had such, such character to actually have a structure to the way that she approached the king. She didn't just bulldoze her way into her husband's presence, into the king's presence. She could have literally died, but she instead waited. Sorry, I'm a bit I'm slightly ill. but she waited for the right time. She was very wise in instructing her people to be fasting, to be praying, to be thinking about her as she goes before the king. She was very wise about the way that she handled even addressing her own husband. I really took that away from Esther in this reading, because it's not that she relies on herself to be able to go forward. Even though she is scared for her own life, she says that, you know, if I go before him, I could die. You know, she still has that mindfulness of her status before the king, but she's also got that determination for her people, that heart for her people, as she is one of them. And she is like, you know what, I'm gonna put my life on the back burner and I'm actually going to go before him. So I really admire Esther's courage and her boldness, and also her just general wisdom in the way that she handled approaching the king and really trying to preserve the life of her people. She was very strategic, and I love that about this book. I also like how the part in chapter 6 where the king can't sleep and he's like, oh, you know what, just read the Chronicles to me. How all of a sudden the person reading stumbles upon the part of Mordecai saving his life, and he's like, oh yeah, he did that. And that kind of signifies a twisting of events, because from that point onwards Mordecai is exalted and Haman is kind of looked at like, after Esther reveals that she is a Jew and that Haman is actually wanting to get rid of everybody because of his decree that he's already made. And yeah, there's that flip at the end with Haman and his property, everything just being given to Esther, and then Mordecai assuming Haman's place, as well as the Jews defending themselves towards the end. So they're actually being given a chance to overcome their enemies as well as to be protected by their queen. And it shows that Ahasuerus is still in control, he's still in power by the end of the book, which shows us as well Queen Esther is still in rule as well. So that's just that picture that's painted at the end, and it's kind of just giving you that sense of peace, and it's just like, this is how it should be. And that kind of blip that came up in Haman is just the way that God will use, even though God is not even mentioned in this book, it's a way that God will use to really show his faithfulness. Even though it was something that was intended for evil, he will show his faithfulness through even through the midst of evil circumstances. So yeah, I really love this book of Esther. I'm going to end the story time / analysis and you know, just going into it here. I just pray that you have a blessed week, and I'll see you very soon with my next video. Make sure to leave a like down below. I don't know if I said that at the start of the video, I probably didn't. Make sure to comment your favourite parts, or just a book that you want me to do next, or a story that you want me to do next, and I'll be glad to go over that and have a look and see what I can find. And make sure that you're subscribed if you haven't already. I'd love to see you around on my channel more after this. And yeah, make sure to become a Bible buddy if you would love to today as well. Just click the join now button or click the link in the description, and I'll catch you in my next one. Stay blessed and bye.